When I got into the online space back in 2020, what everyone was telling us to do in order for us to gain traction is for us to niche down. But as of recent years, the pendulum has swung the other way. People are feeling boxed in creatively. And so the movement now is people going, well, actually, the niche is you. I have spent hundreds of hours, so you don't have to, analyzing hundreds of content creators to see if there's a pattern between niching down or going the niche is you. So in this video, I want to unpack what would make a great content strategy moving into the future with today's very highly saturated and competitive content landscape. The biggest problem that I see with a lot of the obscure content creators who are trying to bring their multi-passionateness into things is that they are not making it clear what is their unique value proposition. For example, you could be someone who's just really into personal development and up-leveling yourself. And so you want to talk about productivity, health and fitness, beauty and style, entrepreneurship. You want to talk about everything. But the thing is, when everyone starts wanting to do this, what ends up happening is that now that becomes the norm, and now it makes it hard to differentiate between this multi-passionate person and this other multi-passionate person. People only have 24 hours in a day, and so their time and their attention is a limited resource. And so if I have an hour every day to spend watching content, I'm always making a decision on who or what needs to fill that gap for me on that particular day. I choose someone based on the day because I'm looking for a specific type of content, a certain vibe of content, and my mind usually just knows and gravitates towards one person who I know is going to deliver that for me because they own that position in my mind. So for instance, there's just some days I want a little bit of a pick-me-up. Naturally growing up, I've always been a bit self-conscious and a bit scared to just really showcase who I was. And so some days I just need someone to give a little bit of pep in my step, to transmute to me a little bit of that bad energy. And so the first person to come into my mind is Kaur. And if you do not know who Kaur is, she is someone who's operating the highly competitive personal development space. Her whole thing is about helping women transform from their current self to their desired self. And her unique flavor in doing so is to become absolutely obsessed with yourself. So even though she's operating in a highly competitive niche, because her unique value proposition is strong, she owns that position, I'm able to remember her and therefore become a more loyal consumer of her content experience. So why do I talk about that? You need to have a strong message about the niche or the problem or the avatar that you are targeting. Now, what does owning a position by having a strong message mean? People sometimes make the mistake thinking that niching down is the only way to own a position. So how to become more productive becomes how to be more productive for millennials. How to lose weight becomes how to lose weight for postpartum women. And for the time being, this worked. And I'm not saying that this is no longer working. There definitely needs to be some element of going after a target audience. However, I just see the simple niching down and not doing the deeper messaging work really breaking down if you're someone who's operating in a highly competitive niche. Because probably there's already a major player operating in every sub or micro niche. So it's in my opinion that it's not enough anymore to simply say that you're here to solve this problem or talk about this thing. Because everyone is essentially saying and promising the exact same thing. People want to know how you are going to solve or talk about the topic or sub-niche differently. And this goes back to my Kaur example. She didn't just focus on the desired big outcome, how to manifest your dream life, because everyone is talking about that. Instead, she starts shifting the focus into how are we going to do that to become absolutely obsessed about yourself. And this message is reverberated through her choice of naming her podcast the Self-Obsessed Podcast, as well as her recent book launch, Buy Yourself the Damn Flowers. And through her unique message and signature content experience, she is able to now carve out a space in our minds so that she can own a position. And this is also how some of her own counterparts are able to carve out a space for themselves as well. Take, for example, example, Lacey Phillips, founder of To Be Magnetic and host of the Expanded podcast. Her unique how is based on neural manifestation, a unique process rooted in neuroscience, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Notice how it's the same promise, manifest your dream life, but it's a different how and thus a different content experience. Let's also take Gabby Bernstein, known as the thought leader for the next generation of soulful thinkers. The promise again, live a life beyond your wildest dreams, but her content experience surrounds trauma healing and manifestation through emotional alignment and spiritual surrender. If we were to take another personal development thought leader, Lavendaire, I hope I'm saying that correctly, her whole thing is about lifestyle design. The content experience has a vibe of that creator archetype, where she uses words like artist of your life. It has a more grounded and creative energy around it. Life is an art. Make it your masterpiece. Art is the ultimate form of self-expression. I want us to take a step back and see how they're all promising more or less the same thing, which is how to manifest your dream life or create your dream life. But notice how each of them have a unique position because they all have their own unique message. They focus on their unique how. So how do we get started on creating ours? Let's go over some questions to ask ourselves. For the niche topic or market that you want to go into, you want to ask yourself 4 questions. The first one is, how are people currently solving the problem? You want to be specific here. What are the current ideologies, the current tips, the current answers that people believe to be true? Secondly, how are you going to solve the problem differently or better than others? What in your unique interests, experience, or story is helping you see things differently than other people? Thirdly, how is this topic or problem being talked about or explained? How deep or shallow is this topic being talked about? Is there just a lot of beginner content? Is there a lot of advanced content? Fourthly, how can you talk or explain about the problem in a unique or better way than the current? Are you a good storyteller? Are you a good analyzer? Do you have a certain level of charisma? Do you have more advanced knowledge? Is there a way of presenting this topic that has not been presented before? Because there could be a subsegment of the market currently not being served with the existing content experiences. And so you need to spend some time really seeing where is the gap in the marketplace. Now, finding your unique message is actually just the first stage, because that is essentially the behind the scenes work. Because the next big issue that you're going to run into is ensuring that the algorithm is actually pushing you out so that you get seen and discovered. The next step is we do need to talk about content pillars. Now, some people may be a little turned off about content pillars because they're like, man, like I'm going to just feel so burnt out if I had to continuously post in this 1 to 5 content pillars for the rest of my creator life. I'm going to talk in a bit about a system that's going to bypass all of that, because most of the time when content pillars are taught, it's in a very static way. But in order for us to even talk about content pillars, we need to understand a little bit about why they're important in the first place. Because if you do not have some sort of structure to your content strategy, it can actually be hurting you in the algorithms. Because the thing with content pillars is that it helps the algorithm categorize you. If the algorithm understands how to categorize you, they will be able to more effectively show your content to the correct people. In a Think Media podcast interview, they were interviewing one of the YouTube liaisons. And this liaison talked about how most people think that when they publish a piece of content, that the algorithms push it out. But it's actually the other way around. It always starts with the viewer first, and the algorithm curates a collection of content when they log onto the app that they will show to this particular viewer. If we're going to talk in technical language, this is what an impression is. An impression is a moment where the algorithm decided to grab your piece of content and put it in a curation for viewers. So sometimes when people have low views on something, if they were to go into their analytics, they will see that it's because they did not have a lot of impressions to start off with. It makes it really hard for the algorithm to put you in that curation when the algorithm does not know where to categorize you. Now, for some people, they may be saying, well, Sam, I see people who they talk about everything under the sun and they still get a lot of views. That is also true, but I always like to think of things in terms of probability and leverage. Bigger creators who are able to talk about a lot of things under the sun and still get a lot of views, what their account or channel has that you don't is they have leverage and just general authority in the algorithm. The algorithm already knows that this person has built a strong enough personal brand where people would really tune in to anything that this creator wants to talk about. So you're probably wondering now, okay, how do I find effective content pillars? How do I know which topics to go after? And what is this static versus fluid content system that you were talking about? The fluid content system is really based on being able to always collect data points and finding new video topics and ideas that could be a potential for you. How you know it's a potential for you is that you know that you can talk about this topic in a way that gives you a competitive advantage, meaning you have a new perspective, or you have a better way of explaining it, or you can talk about it in more depth, or you can present it in a new way that other people have not. However, we must get comfortable with your content pillars revealing itself over time, what I call bottom-up processing. See, most people want to do top-down processing where they immediately go do some exercises and magically find out what their 1 to 5 content pillars are going to be. However, if you want to ensure that the algorithm is going to push out your content, you kind of need to make sure that your content is going to be good. So my plan is to work backwards. I want to go from the bottom up instead of from the top down because I want to see what are topics where I can truly bring a competitive edge. Because you just choosing a content pillar and posting consistently on that topic doesn't automatically mean that you have built authority in the algorithms on that topic. The algorithm is smarter than we think, and it's always being optimized to show the most quality content piece to its audience. Because the algorithm knows all, they actually have incoming data, it can quickly figure out who are the real deal thought leaders in the space. Now, I have a few different exercises when I go through needing to sleuth or stalk a landscape, and I'm going to go through one right now. This method is what I call the competitor first method. Step 1 is you're going to go ahead and you're going to make a dummy account so that you can do some stalking. Step 2 is you're not going to hold back. You are going to start following primary competitors, secondary competitors, tertiary competitors. Now, if you're unsure who are your competitors, this is a part where you need to just start going out there and making moves. You're going to start typing things into the search bar, things that you think you want to go after. From there, you're going to scan the search results and you're going to make note of who is popping up. You're going to subscribe to them and you're also going to add them to your list of people that you are watching. You want to put this in a database of some sort because later you're going to start to see that when you start collecting more data, you're going to start seeing patterns and you're going to start seeing the market at a very high level view. And this is going to make it easier for you to see where you can fill a gap. Now, the third step is where we actually start finding even more topics that you can potentially go for. You're going to go through all of those competitors and you're going to go into their channels and you're going to start seeing which keywords are they typically targeting. Typically, you're going to find competitors going after certain keywords a bit more frequently. So you're going to make note of the fact that they're going after a core keyword, but you're also going to make note of the different ways they have repackaged this core keyword. And secondly, when you're sleuthing around through your competitors, you're going to start seeing other topics that you can go for that didn't initially cross your mind. Next, we're going to go deeper into some analysis so we can start narrowing things down. The first way I like to start off with is by looking at their outlier videos. Analyzing outlier videos has been kind of all the rage recently. Now, if you're wondering what's an outlier video is a video that got significantly more views than typical on that person's channel. You may want to consider putting a priority on these outlier video topics when you're further narrowing down your video topics because you have the actual data and proof that this video topic has the potential to bring in new fresh eyeballs onto you because we've seen it being done for this other creator. There's actually a lot of tools popping into the market to help you do so. One of the tools that's popping into my mind right now is one of 10. Another tool that you can use that you may already be using so that you don't have to go and invest in another piece of software is vidIQ. vidIQ has this little stat that shows you how much better this video is performing than on average on this person's channel. Now from here, you're going to start being able to see patterns because you've been collecting a lot of data. And that brings me to step 5. We've all been taught that if you really want to strategize what are your content pillars, is that you need to start with your target demographic in mind and think about what are the topics that they'll be interested in. The problem is I find this to be sometimes a chicken or the egg issue. What if you're someone who you know your target demographic, but you have no idea what topics would actually grab their attention? So you cannot go in that order. So you need to work backwards. And that's why I talk about you need to collect a lot of data and start seeing patterns. If you do this multiple times, and I'm not saying you're just going to do this 3 to 10 times, if you're doing this 30 times, 40 times, 50 times, 100 times even, you are going to really start seeing major patterns and you're going to be able to objectively start seeing markets, adjacent markets, sub-markets very objectively. Sometimes I feel like the reason why it's so hard for some people to niche down or figure out who they're targeting is because they're not able to see a market from the big picture bird's eye view. So they're having trouble like seeing where they can place themselves. If you start collecting data, you're going to be able to start seeing the different levels of a market, meaning how general a market is versus how niche a market is. You're going to see which topics typically get the attention of a general market and which topics are typically getting the attention of a more niche market. You're also going to be able to see the different avatars within a market. Even within, let's say, the health space, there's different types of trends going on within the health space. And there's even different sub-avatars too. And these avatars are not really demographic based. It is more psychological and more emotional. It's more identity based. And it's hard for you to really pick up on this when you haven't collected a lot of data because you cannot objectively see the market for what it is. So again, step 5 is you just want to keep doing this over and over again. Don't stop at the 5th time you do it. I would actually have this built out into your daily workflow so that it eventually becomes muscle memory. And that is really where things start to unlock and clarity over who you are, the niche you want to serve, and what your unique value proposition starts becoming super, super clear. Now, the last step is that after you created your dummy account, you're going to want to check back in periodically because as you check in daily, you're going to land on the homepage. And if you've been following people within your niche, you're essentially training the algorithm on this dummy account to start showing you more creators or videos that are targeting these target demographics. And it's going to start giving you even more ideas and more competitors to follow. And now you can really go down the rabbit hole. Now, if you're interested in learning more about how to sleuth and stalk, I do have a market research video that I'm working on that I'm going to be launching soon. But if you're really serious about wanting to figure out what your market landscape looks like and how you fit in, feel free to click the link down below to see how we can work together. But Sam, it sounds like you're saying, okay, I could just keep finding new topics based on this fluid content system. But didn't we also talk about how if we're too scattered in our topics, it's going to make it hard for the algorithm to categorize us? Well, haven't you just been listening? Because yes, you are correct. The danger of the fluid content pillar system is that you can be going back into that Me Too influencer where you're talking about everything under the sun and the algorithm doesn't know where to categorize you. And that brings me to my next tip. The question you need to ask yourself is, why do you feel like you need to bring your multi-passionate, multi-dimensional self in full display right from the get-go? If you're someone who's serious about building an online business, about getting seen and discovered, then there needs to be some level of structure and discipline. It is really just a classic example of that starving artist. Sometimes people are just too much into the artist zone, where that's actually what's keeping them stuck. Their artist self and their multi-passionate self is so vital and is really what's going to help them stand out in the market, but it needs to be like channeled properly. It needs to be strategized properly if you really want to bring it to fruition, there's other ways you can bring your multidimensional self to life, but in a strategic way. You do not need to bring like your full-blown multi-passionate self into your front-end content platform. What does this mean? You can bring in your side quests, your side interests, your side thoughts, side hobbies on secondary modes of communication or secondary platforms, aka places where it's more about nurturing and building a relationship and not really about having the algorithm push you to get discovered by new people. Because again, if someone found you on a piece of content and they really like you because you were able to showcase that you have a unique value proposition, most likely they're going to start wanting to get immersed in your world. They're going to perhaps start following other platforms of yours, like maybe Instagram. They may join your newsletter, or it could be like a fans only podcast. If it's on your secondary platforms where it's not really being used to get new traffic in the door, where you can risk the algorithm not truly knowing where to categorize you. So again, it's about exercising that discipline and self-restraint in strategically layering. Now, to see this in action with a creator that has successfully done this is Boho Beautiful. Boho Beautiful has about 3 million subscribers, which is definitely no easy feat. She is someone I personally follow and was the one who's gotten me to be able to successfully stick to my yoga and Pilates routine for the past year and a half. I just love being a part of their content experience. I love their vibe. I love their mission, and I love what they're about. And I just feel good every day doing my morning yoga with them. Her front-end content platform is YouTube, specifically her Boho Beautiful yoga channel. This is where she's really getting discovered by new people. In fact, this is how I discovered her. Off the bat, we can clearly see that they have built a lot of authority around yoga. So when I was searching for a morning yoga routine, they were the first ones to pop up because they have so much authority and so much weight on that topic that when YouTube was curating a collection of videos for me when I logged in, this is who they pulled. If we were to really look at their content strategy, we can see that they're really building authority on keywords such as yoga flow, morning yoga, full body yoga, vinyasa flow. Now, they're not just yoga robots because they're multidimensional human beings. And through me sitting in their content experience, I've gotten to know them and discover them and form a relationship with them because as I go through yoga with them, sometimes they invite me to explore more avenues of their content universe. For example, they have their Stars and Destruct podcast where they host open-hearted conversations with creative thinkers and experts in the field of health, spirituality, activism, self-improvement, inspiration, art, laughter, politics, meaning, and more. And if you were to run a podcast, you know that it's hard to get discovered on a podcast without other ways to drive traffic. So they drive traffic through their yoga content, and if they're in a creative block and they want to explore more in their content experience, they have their podcast for that, where they can have these deeper curiosities of theirs really shine. So in a sense, it's not about just being niched down to the point where you're a robot. Yes, you really want to bring your multidimensional self into an experience because that is how relationships get built. But in order for someone to initially discover you or get drawn into you, you need to make a very clear impression to start off with. Because a scattered person who doesn't seem like they're clear on who they are, why would I be clear on who they are and why would they make an impression on me? Now, I do have a video coming up where I talk more in depth about finding your target audience that would be the best fit for your unique message. So if you're interested in that, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get notified when I launch that video.